Hartmut, it's great to see you.
Good morning.
How are you?
Yeah, it's great to see you.
So I've been wanting to have you on this podcast, Prism, because you're just an interesting, eccentric dude. So I really had a great time working with you during the 90s for 10 years. And this podcast is called Prism because it's about, the goal is for us to reveal your inner color. And look at you. You are colorful. You are a colorful guy. You are, but I'm wearing black because I'm just the interviewer. So I did
You're
not
a designer. I'm not anymore.
You're colorful for many reasons. Your perspective on things. You have a lot of really different interests. You play the piano. Are you still playing? Yeah, you're still playing piano? Are you still driving fast cars?
Not anymore. Okay, just a normal 911.
Not the RS, the GT3 RS?
They were race cars we sold. Yeah.
Do you remember when you were driving me through the Black Forest to go see Cavo, when you were in a new car, it was a turbo, and you decided to demonstrate the brakes, and I thought that my eyeballs were going to come out of my head, man. You were...
Then I don't recall.
Of course. I have a lot of different things to talk to you about, and upon making a list of questions and topics for us to talk about, you're so interesting. And I remember having these wonderful talks with you when I was working at Frog. You would, after the staff went home, I was usually working late and so were you. You would often come into my office late at night as the sun was going down, and we would just start on a conversation. I had no idea where it was going to go, neither did you, but we just riffed on some interesting things, and I'm hoping that we can maybe replay that experience again in some form. And I want you to take lead on the things that really matter to you right now. You have all this experience, you lived a great life of design and just general life. And last night I wrote you, hey, these are generally the things that we're going to talk about. And you wrote back, oh, I want to talk about more metaphysical things.
No, actually looking ahead. Okay, thanks for the compliments to the past. I think didn't look like that when we worked together all the time, which is fine. I think business is not a kissing game, George Bernard Shaw. And I think the reason the reason I agree actually to do this, because most of the time I reject podcasts. It's always the same questions. Actually, we have a good relationship. We can build on something that's good. And then how to look ahead, because we have a lot of challenges which are not coming as a surprise, actually, economically, politically, and so on. And, okay, what are we doing with it? What does it mean for us as designers, as industry, society, and also globally? And, I wrote you that one of my favorite things when I worked in Japan, I got exposed to some Zen, which for an impatient guy like me was kind of hell on earth. But one thing stuck to me, and it's essential of past, present, future, is already here and tomorrow. So the past influences today. You cannot change it, but you can learn from it. And then you live today looking ahead. And I think if you can focus on that today, it would be a great idea.
I think that's a perfect launch point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. A little bit of history. When we worked together way back, it was pretty simple. You talk to a company, they had a problem, we talked to the people, we did some research, also what Patricia does with Whitlet, more excessive than we did it at Frog. And it was a pretty simple kind of business model, so to speak. And naturally the customers or the clients or the companies we worked for were more or less global, American, European, Asian, and so on. And that has changed now. A lot of things have moved to one side, a lot have moved to the other side. And I think one parallel I see from today to when I came to America is design is not seen as what it should be for the country, which is kind of a conceptualization of looking at today, past, and then building a future together. Instead of elbow, and I want this because I deserve it, and the other guy is stupid enough to do it for cheap. So give you one idea, I tried for 10 years, as you may remember, to get a client in America, and only in 1982 it worked with Apple, which was an outlier. So no other American company was accessible to European design. I mean, my friend Richard Supper worked for IBM,
right,
but just as a consultant, what they called giving gasoline. And he was really frustrated, as he told me quite often. And with Apple, it was kind of a lucky strike because Steve Jobs was different. And the industry back then, okay, you know, I tried to go to see this back then, and Magnavox and RCA, Marantz, Mark Levinson, all these consumer electronic brands, which were up my alley, and nobody thought that design is important. Nobody thought that they could do something about development. They just stuck with the model they had. That compared to Sony, where they excessively innovated in manufacturing and engineering and how to make it smaller, better, quicker, not cheaper, smaller, better, and come quicker to market. Was such a contrast. And actually that is what Steve Jobs then liked, that we could bring it to Apple, this methodology of integrated processes from looking at the people, community, converting it, the technology is for everybody, democratic, and so on. And a lot of people who regret that the jobs are gone, I think the jobs people back then shouldn't come back because they are not good. We need new jobs, new technologies, more ecological. So I think that gives a frame.
Do you think since those times, and that was like in the early 80s when you were working with Apple, has design become commoditized? And you called Apple the outleader, I think is a term you just used.
No, it's a little bit a human aspect, you know. The design profession is not protectable like doctors or lawyers. I think hopefully we have a better image than lawyers because they run the country right now, most of them. The fact that design is a little bit like a could be a benign drug, could also be a bad drug, you know. It's nice, and I mean everything is looking good. So is it
how can design be a bad drug? How is design a bad drug? Just bad design?
It was thoughtless.
Thoughtless.
Short-sighted. Just make it nice. Just sketch it. Just
agree.
do it.
Totally agree.
Not. You know, I worked in the assembly lines, both the Mercedes. Okay, as a student, we were in the welding department, fixing the welding back then done for the bodywork. I worked in electronics at ATT. Assembly line, 8 hours a day, you're really done. I mean, always the same thing. That's not a very exciting job. Also, I must say the fumes you get exposed back then in electronic production were not healthy. The soldering is acid that goes to the lungs and so on. My parents were in the fabric business, apparel. I also saw apparel production in Germany. They also were not healthy. It was awful work.
Yeah.
I mean, the air was full of lint. You know, it's so I think the jobs we need are healthy, good earning jobs for qualified people, make enough money to move up the social ladder.
Do you think that we are, as a society, are we learning? I'm very concerned about what's going on in regards to like the environment and workplace conditions and the like.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, most of the jobs in China are not good neither, or in Bangladesh, in the fabric industry,
Right.
the buildings with 10,000 people stitching T-shirts for $5.
I want to know why Americans want those jobs here. What makes us think?
Yeah, it's a little bit
we
of
should have
a lack of information. I think the jobs we need are new technologies, which require more training, more specialty. Ideally, you do things which other people cannot do. That was the old way. One guy was hunting better than others, so he could actually exchange his animals he was hunting against some other things. Then came decoration and jewelry, whatever. I mean, it's a human element.
Yeah.
To do something other people cannot, but it's a value for them to give you something in exchange. So both sides feel good about it. I think in the current job situation, also here in America, the value people provide is not respected by the people who need the money to pay for it. They think it's not worth it. But it is worth it. And that is actually a big misunderstanding. So the other guy is stupid enough to give me his stuff cheap. That sinks the whole level of quality. And I think that is something we have to work on. Communicate it. Take a pride on learning a good trade, which is respectable, it's good for your life, you can make a good earning, not just all these low-paid service jobs, supermarket packing. It's kind of horrible.
How can we encourage more of these aspirational values in young people to get them to think that there can be more meaning in one's life?
Yeah, that's a mission impossible.
But I mean, you've dedicated a good part of your career to design education.
Actually, they are good examples. Let's say, take Herman Miller. They were good back then, starting with Charles Eames and Ray Eames and so on. And they maintained a level of good quality, commitment to design, ergonomics, providing solutions which provide office workers a good way to work, healthy, and so on. And they maintained the quality. But there's also the chair for $50 made somewhere, banked together, breaking the spine. And I think that needs a little bit more. I just read in the New York Times, what is the best office chair? Okay, there's one from Herman Miller way down the Aaron and so on, something from Steelcase. And then the rest is just the cheapos. How can the New York Times promote a cheapo? Are they out of their mind? I mean, what are they sitting? I know in New York they have a pretty cool office.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot sit on a luxurious chair and then promote the crap. That's one example.
I know. This has always been the challenge. Like, how can we as designers create these products of great value and maybe even luxury, while still making them attainable? These products attainable for people. That's a problem. I mean, I love good lounge chairs. And to buy a good lounge chair, you're going to spend $10,000. But then there are these companies like Eternity Modern that can make that same chair for $2,000, and it's pretty close. I don't like it, and it is plagiarism. But they've somehow been able to make a big business. I would imagine some of those companies now are even bigger than a DWR and Miller Knoll.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, we would educate and train people to be able to do that. I mean, ideally, when you look at, let's say, our design education, and I'm trying to inspire some school in Germany. I did that in China, no matter what you think, and in Austria. In Austria, it was possible to get a good design class together because Austria has no rules. It's freedom. Despite being an art university, I could take the kids to the technical university, the ecological department. We did a portable dialysis machine. I went to the clinic with the kids. The professors came over. Other students joined. There was no limit of cross-collaboration. In Germany, it is not allowed to take it from one class to the other. In China, the point was they wanted to get a new design university, and they just put the funding in and invited also some foreign people and let them work. And then I found it's a good idea. Now we can duplicate and make it 5 times, which is a challenge because you also need the teachers. But at least the attitude, I think, in design schools must be, you must be socially beneficial what you do. You must be ecologically balanced. You must be able to understand technology. Ideally, you have an engineering degree before you start designing. Okay, naturally, I'm a bitter case. I was forced through the system. But it helped me tremendously to have studied engineering and to have studied logistics and process orientation. And then you have a different kind of designer who is not just coming as beautifier or as a sketch victim, but really a partner on the table. And I think that is what we partially achieve, also what you do well. We need just this integrative quality that you cannot, we are not dictators, maybe sometimes we are, but we can help everybody to work together, get better, communicate. Okay, if finance has fictive numbers, asking engineering to do everything for nothing, that's not going to work. So somebody has to tell them the truth. It's not going to work. And then it's okay, we outsource what Motorola did. It was they had these incredible good R&D guys, but they forced them to be cheap like hell. Completely ignorant, not arrogant, ignorant. So naturally they went to people in Asia to make it cheaper. And then the people in Asia learned on it and came back. I think I also believe, let's say, a good German company has a tradition of Switzerland, Austria, Denmark. The tradition is that the local company has local employees who also use the local product. So it's really a small circle. And it's not this huge, always big business on quick buck and shareholder value. Yeah. Shareholder value is actually, I think, a destructive element here in our country.
Sure. Let me unpack a few of the things you just said. One is really good advice to young designers. I think that you were stressing to be well-rounded, to really understand how things work. That's a big criticism of mine with young designers, is figure out how things work, because a lot of times the answers will present themselves to you once you really analyze the problem. To be very interconnected, you talked about the interconnectivity, the importance of a designer, to be kind of like a glue among the different disciplines, to the point where I think designers are almost like therapists to their clients. Oh, I totally think so. And the reason is, like, a lot of times we'll be in a meeting, there will be marketing person who hasn't talked to the engineering team in 6 months, and we bring them together
they never
so
talk
that they
because
empathize.
They hate the truth. Yeah.
They hate the truth. I know.
I call that American corporate disease. It's really most other countries. In France, they have other problems of arrogance. But actually, the industrial model, when Henry Ford started the Taylorism, which ironically he got from the Colt company, the weapons manufacturer. We divide the process in pieces where non so skilled people can be very skillful on a small part. And together they are more skillful than one skillful person can build an entire automobile. So that is also a very tempting thing for management. You get a finance guy who only cares for money. You get an engineer who only cares for R&D. You get a sales guy who sells everything, including his grandma's last pennies. And it's a bit separating, which makes it easier to direct the company against each other, but it's a very self-destructive mechanism.
It is, yeah. So do you think the designer can be a coalescer? You think that's one of our jobs as a designer?
Yeah, actually, first of all, I think you said therapist. I think we may have to be courageous and risk to getting fired. For example, I got fired once, actually several times, but this one I remember. So we cannot call it Motorola, is now Chinese brand, so we can be honest. Motorola developed telephones for Nextel in a special PCM standard, wireless. And the people there worked really hard in Florida. And then there was a huge presentation, and executives didn't come by because they went to a country club. About 2,000 people were waiting, and nobody came. And then they went back to work completely demotivated. That was the moment I realized this company is going down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not savable anymore. Now we still tried from Frog outside to provide them solution, and we worked also with Nextel and later Sprint. And then the Motorola management decided not to tell them the truth because it would be too much work to do that, but to fake them into a old concept. Mm-hmm. So it was a big meeting, and honest as I was, or thoughtless, I said, okay, that's what we want to do. And then I got a call, and I was fired on the spot. And it actually was a relief, because it was like you lie to yourself.
Yeah.
That's not good. Interesting enough, we got hired by Nextel to do the phone. Nevertheless.
You know what? I love
but then
this.
the next point is Samsung built it, not Motorola.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Nextel also went downhill after the merger. You know, that's also another thing. Whenever something is good in America, they go public, they have a merger, they have an acquisition, downhill. And somebody walks off with the money, but the people at the companies get cheated out of their future.
Yeah.
That is not good.
Let's talk about, you taught me when I was a young designer coming into Frog to be fearless and to always look for the truth in things. And so I witnessed Frog being fired more than once by Motorola, but I remember Oracle, I remember Sun Microsystems, and all we were doing is we were just trying to tell the truth about their condition, right? I think that's one of the jobs. You actually ended up on the cover of Business Week magazine, and the title was Rebel with a Cause. I thought that so captured who you are as an individual, as a designer, and all of your beliefs.
Yeah, it was us as a team, Dan.
But still, you were. I remember going in. I think I had been at Frog for 6 months, and we sat down with Larry Ellis, and we were doing. Remember this packaging and graphic design thing?
Yeah.
And we all sort of collectively, after Larry said something like he knows about design, I think you were the one that said, well, Larry, you don't know anything about design anyways, so we don't care about your opinion. And he pushed his chair away from the table, stood up and said, that's the end of our relationship. Now, he ended up calling us back 5 years later. But that kind of fearless belief in what we are doing, what you are doing, I think in some ways has been lost. That was a good lesson for me, to just call it like it is. And I carry that kind of mantle forward in my business today. We really try to find out what is the hidden essence in something and to let it have a voice, to let it out.
Yeah, actually, I don't see it so romantic. I think it's more, to be honest, it's more a method of survival. For example, okay, you got an American education. Still, I think it was the way I know you. They asked you to do what you had to do. Today, young people don't even know the word no anymore. The point is, what is wrong is wrong. And when somebody is lying, it's even worse than stealing. Because you steal the truth. You steal the moral understanding of being together as humans. And I think lying is also negating reality. Yeah, it's going to be great, you know? It's going to be great. It will not be great. You get, for example, there was one project with Steve where in the beginning, my English wasn't that good. It also was Japanese tainted, grammar bad. And so one famous company, engineering company, brought something. Oh, Macintosh. I mean, in Cavo, the German dental company doing a lot of sheet metal stuff, they would have hit the guy out of the door. He said, "Withdraw your license." Anyway, so, oh, it's great, it's great. I said, "No, it's shit. It's a German word." And Steve liked that. I said, "I like the German word for that because maybe it is." And then we reworked it. But if we would have got it, it was way too complicated, expensive, and didn't work. It was not manufacturable. Yeah. The guy had built something in his fantasy. Somebody has clamped it together. You can clamp everything together you want to do. And that was not okay. And so many things here are kind of, yeah, it's going to be great. It's not going to be great.
No.
And I think the overall situation on trade right now, it needs to be fixed, to be honest. A lot of things need to be fixed. And previous government also should have fixed a lot of stuff. To say there's 1,000 people in the room, one person, I want this, then they listen to the one guy. Yeah. In Germany, when that happens, the one guy gets up, said, "You shut down or leave." Simple. But that's the reason the guy, maybe I should think a little bit more before I put my hand up. And this extensive individualism and lack of honest critique, that was still striking to me back. It also strikes me today.
The lack of honest critique, the lack of critical thinking, the lack of common sense. These are all things that we are trained to do, as designers at least. So I am so shocked when I see what's going on in our world.
Yeah, I mean, I give an idea that LinkedIn is the only social media I am on sometimes. And then AI, they make another thing. And I work with Midjourney to the access to get something creative out of that. I mean, it's design porn. There's nothing new.
AI.
There's nothing
AI?
new. Yeah, there's nothing new.
I was interested in your opinion about
this. And
this.
then people complain, yeah, okay, I'm not a shrink, but they need, they're in the wrong field.
So what do you mean by there's nothing new? What do you mean by there's nothing new in regards to AI?
Yeah, because AI cannot make nothing new. If you don't give it an idea, I think it's a tool. Mm-hmm. You must learn to, I mean, you know, in the beginning we were sketching. You're better than me on that. Because my prof, Carl Ditter, told me when I sketched his rendering, that Esslinger, in Germany don't use first names, Esslinger stops his American shit in German.
Really?
You sketch what you imagine.
Yeah.
And your imagination fills in the void. And then you make a model. And then you sketch again. You don't make nice pictures. It's real.
Yeah.
So that is one point. And then
that was always a frog way.
Yeah, and then we were the first who really made models with some lucky coincidence, finding the right people. You know, I got the master model maker from the Hochschule für Gestaltung in Ulm, Paul Hedlinger, because the school was closed, and I gave him a job, and he did miracles for us. Then we got CAD. So we were the first design studio who got CAD, as you know. And we spent millions on it, insane. But
remember that, those big VAX machines with the spinning disc?
Yeah, it was the VAX 90. We had 4 of them. $2 million, 2 here, 2 in Germany. But the point was not we didn't use it to impress people, but to improve our process. And then be able to get the machine, CNC machine. Then we bought the CNC machines. We got quicker in the model. But we didn't compromise our process of creative thinking, conceptualization. Then actually came a lot of illustration. Finally, people just render something and it's looking good. And naturally now with AI, instead of using AI should be used for simulation. What happens if we do this statistically? If we get 100,000, 1 million pieces, what will be the ecological footprint? What will be the social influence? Somehow, what makes sense? What does not make sense? What is then the correct manufacturing method? Which country, which factory, and so on.
You expect AI to give you all those answers?
Yeah, in America we need a supporting system, you know. There's a lot of creative people, small startups, that need a supportive system of original design manufacturers like Flextronics, for example, who can do something for them, locally also, prototyping, because we cannot do everything ourselves. There's too much investment. But back to the point of of understanding. I think I would call it be true to the problem. When you mentioned medical doctors, if somebody is sick, you just don't hand them. Okay, there's another crisis we have right now, our health system under pressure.
Yeah.
But a good doctor will not recommend aspirin when you have a serious problem. And it will not tell you just believe this is okay. So I think the honesty naturally is also part of an ethical obligation.
Mm-hmm. But before we talk about that, I want to get back to AI just for a moment, so we're clear on your belief around that. Because
again, sorry.
So I'm interested in where you think AI is going to go and how it will affect this industry, because it's very young. I mean, it's only a couple of years old now. So at least as far as applied practice.
It's actually two problems. There's machine learning is around since quite a while. And actually for us designers, machine learning is more important.
So we're starting to use it, but not in the way that people would think.
I mean I once asked to write a love letter to my wife. She would actually, you would not believe how.
Well, that's not a good idea.
No, the point is, it always looks at a million love letters, right? And then it just takes out what makes sense. Or you say, for example, chief design officer of a company, they always bring out a man. Why not a lady?
Yeah.
You know? Well, the lady is always looking sexy and the man looks stupid in it. It's really, the whole input is dummifying because the programmers don't know life.
Yeah.
They just take data.
I think that can be fixed.
So I'm a bit realistic on that one. And okay, as we already are on it, our country, what can we do? For example, in the first Trump administration, there was a huge tax break. Billions of dollars relieved companies from paying taxes. So what did they do? Did they invest in new factories? Did they invest in R&D? Did they invest in hiring people and educating them? No, they bought back their stock, enriching the other guys who know.
Yeah. We all know how that's going.
I think the methods of developing a harmonic industrial model are well known, but they are not so attractive financially. When you have some financially minded people doing it, they don't want to build potential. And then they sit there with the billions. The good thing is they don't know what to do with it, you know?
But there have been times throughout history where harmonic industrial methods have netted amazing results, right? Yeah. So how do we get back to that? And how can designers especially play a part in this?
I think we have to make our own companies.
Yeah, that's the conclusion I've gotten to as well. You need a vision. You need the guts to go after it.
Yeah.
You need to see it and to bring meaning to the people. I would agree.
Yeah, actually, I think, it's a good point. If you take a Swiss company or a German company in the old days, it's also different now a little bit, but normally a family starts a company. And in the meantime, the son builds it, and then the grandson or granddaughter continues to build it. For example, one example is the Trump family for laser cutting and automation. So then, Mr. Leibinger, he was an engineer, and the previous owner, Mr. Trump, didn't have children, so he allowed Leibinger to buy the shares and own the company, which was really small. Then he made it into a multi-billion-dollar innovation leader globally with a near monopoly in technology. He has 3 kids. One is architect, one is engineer, and one is, call it business. She always was in his on his lap. She followed him day and night in what he did, and she now runs a company. And she is really smart and really gives people, she's just competent, also outspoken. Now what happens? We have a crisis right now. Do they go to vacation? No. The family stays here and starts community work in the village. The factory is down for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they start community teaching, training, fun training. They also guarantee that the kids will get an apprenticeship in the company. That's how you build
That's right.
a culture. And there are many of those in Germany and Switzerland. And that's the way to build it. Naturally, she's a billionaire, and her brother is actually chief operating officer in engineering, and the other one is a pretty well-known architect in the meantime. So the ethics of that family is, we are not here for our pleasure or screwing around or driving around in a yacht. We are here, it's our life.
Yeah.
And that is a success model. So when they have negotiations, okay, the unions have certain ideas. They make their own negotiations because people know what they get. Because the company is successful, they get more than what the union asks for. They're still unionized naturally. That's the law in Germany. But the point is, her dad and she are good examples, leading by an ethical involvement and transparency, and not going like this. Other German companies, same problem. The grandchildren become art collectors and stuff, company goes down. Because when you get when you lose the lock to your community, some lifeline is getting stretched, And I think that is what we need in America too.
Wouldn't you also say that it's related to just finding your passion and going with it? I mean, this is what a lot of people have forgotten to do.
Yeah.
They seem to think that things can be given to them, or maybe there's a general societal malaise, a feeling like with a lot of young people I see that I talk to, is they can't seem to find a way forward.
Yeah,
why is it so difficult to lock into a passion for so many people, do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about feeling entitled. You can mention it because everybody knows what happens with Maytag. Maytag and Iowa, we tried to get them working more together. They had a new CEO, and then the board decided to sell the company to Whirlpool. That is a public view. The internal view is that the people really refused to change. And the famous thing, intercorporate collaboration, motivation, fixing something when they find it. For example, some of the washing machines were dripping oil into the laundry. That's not good. So the answer that you wash it again is also not good, because it will drip oil again. Find, please, the little piece where the oil is dripping.
Yeah.
And they didn't, because the next guy, it would reduce the rate of their payment. It's too much. It's too much ingrained self-entitlement, And I think what we naturally need is, I would call it actually love. When I love what I do, I take care. I don't let it flounder. When I see it, I fix it.
I couldn't agree more. I
Positive.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So, I remember when I was working at Frog, one of the things that I noticed, you had this uncanny ability to see talent in people. You always knew the right people to hire. I learned a lot from you in that regard. But what were you looking for in people? What did you see? How did you identify that talent?
Actually, well, that's a question, man.
Because so many great people have been through Frog. I mean, look at all the...
Yeah, actually, when
alumni.
we first met, I told you to. It's actually, first of all, I love our profession because it saved my life, Had a very bad upcoming. I learned a lot in the village, but it was very intolerant to a kid like me. High school was not very enjoyable. Sports saved me, music saved me. I went to the military to get out of it, became an officer. the German army in logistics, learned a lot about logistics, actually funny, helped me later a lot. But in the army, first time I realized when you're together in some, whatever you call it, critical situation, you cannot say myself. And actually then when you choose people to be with you, you choose someone who can run the mile about 4 minutes plus. That's the standard. You don't get a slow guy. You may love him, but it doesn't help.
All right, so you look for performance.
Yeah, it's performance. It's like in sports.
Yeah.
But it's also the love for it. For example, I think, to be honest, when we met first, I saw you really were talented, but you also like to paint, which is in my music. I'm not a master guitarist or master pianist. So if I would assume I'm Oscar Peterson, please not. I'm happy with what I do. And you focused on what you do best. You also still paint, I still play piano. But you had something which was clear, visible. So that's one part. But it's also talking. Some people are really... We had a guy from the Braun company that they wanted to work with us, and they did some hand mixer. And my partner back then, Andreas, asked him, okay, how did you do that? And Andreas also, he's a Schwabian, I'm Black Forest. So honestly, and then the guy said it took 9 months, and then Andreas said, that's a thing of 2 days, man. He said, what do you mean? I said, you just sketch it, you make a drawing, you make a model, and after a week you go to the client. And then he goes, oh my God. Not a guy for Frog.
Right.
Another guy came, and we had his meeting was 2 o'clock, and he saw that we were working like crazy, and I said, okay, I just help first. So his asking for a job was working in our model shop in the garage like crazy to get our model done. And we said, okay, that's the right attitude. He didn't need to show anything.
Yeah.
That was Thomas Gingerle.
Wow. Yeah, Thomas. Wow, I didn't know that's how he got a job.
And actually, I think at one point, it's also with Whipsaw, or with Whitlet, with Patricia's company, it also becomes a magnet for people to see there is great team, there is great work, the ethics are good, it's also fun, there is no BS, I want to be there.
Yeah.
And then pay is not the ultimate
that was
thing.
not even...
You can get a lot of money for being abused. So it's a combination. But I think in Frog, what I always looked for, maybe you do it too, I look for people who are not me, but something different, and then you give them the freedom to do their own best, but in an ethical framework of collaboration.
That was so clear. Man, I will never forget, being in my late 20s, and you believed in me, and you put me in these crazy situations in front of CEOs, and you're like, just do it. And I really...
Dan, this is a bit too romantic.
No, you did, but it's true. It's true. That's what you did, and that's what you did with a lot of people that you trusted. And that's so unusual nowadays.
And I think you also have to stand up for your people. Let's say, like Motorola insulted a lot of our people that told them to stop it. And that didn't make me popular, but I think if you always only go for your own advantage, it's not working. But we had a good example, as you may recall, typically advertising agencies. And the American principle is, at the end of the meeting, everybody can talk, and the big boss at the end, come on, and even Steve Jobs did it like that. Our principle was, the youngest speaks, and then the rest shuts up. Mm-hmm. Because that will encourage a fresh view. It will encourage honesty with everybody else. I mean, people kind of try to please me, and that was not good. So we were once at came with a dental company, and then Mr. Zinser, the CEO, asked the guy, okay, you're new at Frog. Frog is incredibly expensive. And okay, we were loyalty, it didn't matter. But it just was Schwabian, nice guy. And then he asked our guy, so what is your contribution? And then he said, I'm here since 4 weeks. I work with Hartmut on your account, and I must say your engineers don't even follow your advice. They always try to get around with lame excuses. And, since I said, what do you think? I think he sees something, we should discuss it. You know, that the people feel, yes, I'm important, and I can be honest, I can say what I think is to be said, and then there will be action, and not, and a lot of the complaints, if somebody complains he's in the wrong field, or if somebody complains about design today, I think it's in the wrong field.
Yeah, you know, that
It's
freedom
not
the freedom of expression, I think, was so important to the success.
It's like a doctor
of
coming
Frog.
to a patient, oh my God, I don't know what to do. My life is horrible. I mean, her life is horrible. These guys are nuts, you know. How can you be like this? Like, sorry for being a bit loud here, but this really gets me riled up.
Yeah. So one thing I always admired at Frog is the belief in principles, and the principles were such a guide, such a light there, and there were things that feel like they're very common sense to me, but like I'll never forget. I have to tell this story when we were working with Braun. I thought this is hilarious. And Braun didn't give us credit on a design award. I think something went wrong. And you might even recall.
It was, I think it was an ear thermometer.
Right.
Sonja Schiefer worked on it. Really nice design. And then it was a local startup, and then Braun bought the company and rebranded it Braun. We had published it, and then we got a letter from a lawyer to stop this because Braun doesn't name outside designers, everything goes to the fame of Dieter Rams, and so on. And then I just sent my collection of all the Braun things back.
No, wait, this is the funniest thing. So, all right, so that was the condition, right? So you made an announcement to everybody at Frog to bring in all of your Braun products, toasters, mixers, shavers. So we didn't know what you were up to. So we brought all these products in. There must have been 50 of these Braun products, and you had the model makers build a crate. Yeah. It was a meter by meter by meter, a cubic meter crate. And we threw all of these Braun products in there.
Yeah.
And you sent it to the CEO of Braun,
then
basically with an FU note, which I just couldn't believe.
No,
it.
but
And then
follow up, then he called me and invited me to come, and then I got there. And Dieter already had retired. So what was left of Dieter, they had already destroyed. And there was this wimp sitting on the table and weaseling around. And then they felt that I asked for a job at Braun.
No.
And then maybe we can...
By sending all the products back?
Yeah, he was impressed. And naturally he realized what we have done for Sony, Apple, and all the other things. But he was his... Yeah, Braun had a cultural problem, you know. Originally, it's actually interesting. Originally, it was a small German brand who did a shaver and some radios. And the two sons took it over from the dad, and then they got in touch with the Hochschule für Gestaltung in Ulm, Hans Gügelow, the designer, and Otto Eicher, the graphic designer. And then Otto redid the branding a bit, and Hans Gügelow just designed the whole thing, like all the products. They were not done by Rams, they were done by Hans. And then they switched it, and then Hans Gügelow died of a heart attack, age 40-something. And then, Dieter took over, and then they made a kind of this cult, boxes and so on, which is not bad, don't get me wrong. And also went to watches and other lifestyle things. But the Braun brothers sold it to Gillette. So it was managed out of Boston on profit. The German CEO of Gillette, he acquired Braun because he was a design believer. Mm-hmm. So he saw this as a design brand, but not as a revenue profit maker. It was a bit of a cult thing. And then Braun got this image, but like Brion Vega or Artemide,
Right.
which was not backed up by numbers. And naturally, when he then talked to me, he said, okay, we are so great. Working for Braun is the Olymp of design. And I said, your numbers suck. That got the end of that. I said, what do you want? I said, you can do things. I said, what you should do is actually do computers, do something. The next generation. The radios is old stuff.
Yeah, and they didn't.
The shavers are good. So they're still, okay, then Gillette got acquired by Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble says the shavers are good. All the other Braun design things they licensed to the Lungi in Italy, to the watchmaker in Amsterdam, so they're now licensing the brand. It's not what it looks like. I think for me back then, the true motivator was Olivetti with the Italian guys.
Yeah.
That was really Bellini, Bonetto,
Such an inspiration
Colombo,
to me too.
Hans von Klier. They really pushed the envelope, and they were really example. But then also Olivetti fell into the financial trap. That I think was the grandson, Benedetti, whatever his name was, he got into financial speculation, made some bad investments, and then Olivetti.
Yeah, it's such a shame. That was a design icon. That company.
Yeah, a lot of companies in Europe went down when a financial guy took over.
So, the design world, when you founded Frog, was pretty much driven by these Bauhaus ideals.
No.
Form follows function. I mean, come on,
No,
Brown?
Dan.
How was it different?
I mean, Bauhaus is something else. You must understand that 19th century in the Western world, including America, was the ultimate tasteless age, like Trump's home at the Trump Tower. Gold paint on
disgusting.
wood. It was completely crazy. So after World War I, huge crisis, and the results showed it cannot continue like that. So the Bauhaus idea was political, to liberate industrial production from the terror of feudalistic aesthetics. Give an idea. In a typical situation like this, you are the boss, I'm the visitor, you sit higher than me, and my chair is tilted, so I always feel uneasy. All manipulation. I had less decoration on my chair than you had. Everything was done by hierarchy. And the Bauhaus was democratic. That's why the Nazis also kicked it back. The second thing they did, production methods defined the design. They came the form followers. Form followers function was actually Sullivan. Right. And when you look at his buildings, they're not very functional.
Right.
And he meant
decoration.
The true sense is like in nature. Form in architecture almost always will follow function, which means it should not collapse, not how it looks. But naturally, advertising and people like slogans. So our slogan then was form follows emotion, which is also a little bit stupid, to be honest. All slogans are stupid. But the point is, the Bauhaus gave a new idea, promoted a new idea of industry defines shape. It's more democratic, it's more affordable, it's more accessible. And that came back with the HFG in Ulm in 1953, founded by people of the German resistance against the Nazis, and then also international. They invented design as a modern profession. They went lower, had on styling, Dreyfus in America, we had that already. You were there yourself. But the school in Ulm invented the idea of industrial design, communication design, as an industrial-minded activity, not art, but process-minded for the better of the people. Take resources from nature, apply process and culture, and provide a result which provides a human-minded, feasible, sustainable environment, objects. So in that thing, I think Frog was closer to the Ulm school on that, but very also influenced by the Italians who really put just fun into their products.
Yeah. Okay, this is where I wanted to go with this conversation on this particular point, because whether you agree or not, that whole form follows function and that whole Bauhaus ethos was such a driven cause back then when you founded the company in Germany, specifically, not here for sure.
No, it was an excuse. Sorry, it's good to be disagreeing sometimes. It was an excuse for unbelievably boring, shitty design.
Okay, maybe so.
No, it's true.
There was a lot of unbelievably boring, shitty design happening in Germany, and along comes Frog. I remember seeing in 1982, after I just graduated, I went to this show, you probably don't even remember this, called 50 Industrial Designers. It was at the Landesgewerbeamt in Stuttgart. And I'm looking at, okay, nice, functional, kind of boring, but sleek still. Here, there. All of a sudden I come across the green Vega television and the Hansgrohe tree bell shower handle.
So that was
and the roller skates.
Yeah.
The roller skates. And I thought, what the hell is this? Really cool stuff. It felt Italian, it felt emotional, but here it is coming out of the Black Forest. And I went up to the curator of that exhibit, Frau Lemp, I can't remember, I believe her name. I said, tell me about this company, Esslinger Design. And she goes, oh, you don't want to know about them. They're down in the Black Forest. I'm like, I'm going to go visit them. And she says, oh, no, you don't want to go down there. They're crazy. They're a bunch of hippies down there. So what was it at that time down in the Black Forest? I mean, what the heck were you guys drinking and smoking? What was it that made you believe that you guys could make a difference in the design world by doing edgy, cool stuff like that?
Okay, first of all, we were not drinking, and we were only a few of us. Actually, did we have somebody smoking? My first wife smoked.
Maybe Georg Sprang.
The Georg didn't smoke.
No?
We were fanatics. We were crazy.
Well, that was clear. It was evident in the work.
That was it. And we had fun.
By the way, you must have been crazy because when I did take that bus ride from Stuttgart down to visit you and meet you for the first time, hang on. I showed up on the bus. I get out of the bus, and an old woman takes one look at me, and I'm holding my portfolio. And she starts laughing, and she just shook her head. And she went like this, because the studio was up the hill. She's like, you need to go that way. She clearly knew that I was there.
Actually, you came late.
Frog.
We already had our building before we were in the garage. The kitchen was redone as a model, as a finish. Finishing. We also cooked sometimes there. Now the point was strictly, okay, I just felt that, you must understand a little bit. There was just a lot of music. It was, Chuck Berry came when I was really a kid. I had exposure to fashion from my parents' shop, going to fashion shows. There was no color there, by the way. The whole thing was joyless, Germany was depressed still. Mm-hmm. We still had Nazi teachers. There were Nazis and there remained Nazis, and they forced us to negate the whole shit. And then we got into kind of a rebellious state, which it's pretty good to be a rebel. It's better to be a creeping snail,
How did you keep that alive as the company ethos? Because I remember when I got there, it was like a collection of like superstar players. They didn't always mesh together, but they were creating rock and roll. And we were able to form that team.
The secret was we were very different. So Andreas was more the rational guy, accommodating. George was crazy. I was a bit difficult. But we were a good match. When you are equal, then you get into a fight. If you're not equal, you help each other. And we were, my personal view still today is that we have to excite people. We are obliged as designers to provide positive vibes.
Yeah, I totally agree.
When you get a product and you look at it, wow, I really love it, then you have achieved something. And most other stuff just becomes commoditized.
You have always said, you had this little slogan, which most people didn't understand. You always used to say, as things were like hitting the fan on an account, or when you walked in the office one day, you said, we're going to move our Japanese office to Singapore. You used to always say, rather glibly, you would say, oh, change is fun. And to most people, change is not fun. Change is disruptive and chaotic.
Change was needed, otherwise we would have gone bankrupt.
Absolutely. And I think design is all about change. That's why companies come to designers.
No, actually, that brings it. Okay, change is fun if you really think about it, because then you can do something. You know, if there's no change, you constantly do the same thing again, then why are we designers in the first place? So change, I think, is required for our profession.
And I think the key word is fun, because it has to be, if you are really being your full designer, it should be. You can make it fun.
You know, it reminds me a little bit. Okay, I was a mid-distance runner, half mile, 800 meters. So you train and do everything. And the pieces when you are in a competition, the last 50 meters, you should not be able to think anymore. Because you just want to reach the end of this. No matter what, you cannot think. And if you really gave it all, you cannot think. But after that, an incredible feeling of satisfaction comes up, even if you don't win. But you went beyond the point where you feel comfortable to the end. So it's a little bit this masochistic element to punish yourself through doing something incredibly difficult and then having mastered it and then get the feeling out. And also do it for others. Mm-hmm. You know, it's known that firefighters who save people have a huge satisfaction after the fact, despite the risk and the crazy things that went with the flames. Sure. So there's something human about it, that we need the challenge of a crisis to be creative, to be special, to be beyond the point.
Mm. Do you think that is the height of creativity when you are
the creativity
under
only
stress like that to create? I mean, that's the proverbial Van Gogh, you know, under terrible personal stress and even despair, and yet he's able to access his creativity.
You know, innovation is provocation. You know, the pin, if you have an idea, and that's if we have done that before, and other people have tried. Mm-hmm. For example, my theory is that Silicon Valley right now, all the wealthy people and funds and VCs invest billions in AI, is because the other guy does it. They don't even know what they invest in. But they follow, like the lemmings, the other guy. On the other hand, they are afraid of physical investments because that takes time. And when you say, okay, I do a new mousetrap, then how will it work? What will it cost? And so on. So a physical product requires true answers.
And fortitude.
Software you can sell to the end for nothing.
Yeah.
And that shows how they think they play it safe. Everybody gets billions, because for them it doesn't mean much, they have too much of it. But to invest in some industrial endeavor, which America really needs, they don't have the guts, they are cowards.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not because they have no imagination. What will it take to build something? You know? So I think we need an object culture back in our country. To honor the object for what it is: complicated, difficult, hard work, but also fun.
Yeah.
Because then you have something. In AI, you have only another stupid
A lot
thing.
of entrepreneurs have forgotten that it is fun. They're just so afraid of the bottom line and not meeting it. I see this every day.
I mean, it's interesting enough. There are examples. Apple is an example. Even Tesla is an example. If you really think about it, Tesla created an industry.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
And then they don't like it because it's electric and lobby and also. So sometimes you think, isn't anybody telling them the truth one day? But the
That
truth
is a whole other.
Okay, but
can of worms,
that
man.
brings me change is fun. You know,
Yeah.
it is fun in the end to win. You know the famous thing when Gretzky once did an interview. I was lucky enough to see him play. He was an incredible player. And he said, I think it was the first Stanley Cup final against the New York Islanders. They lost in 4 in Edmonton. And then he went to the cabin of the Islanders to find out how they did it. And then he opened the door and there was quiet. He think they already had left. And they were sitting there completely exhausted. Then he realized they had given it all. And he said, we didn't. And that's the feeling of winning. You must give it. And in our country, thinks we can just take it. That's probably the mistake of perception.
Isn't change also?
Or we deserve it, we deserve it. And then in the end, you have naturally no friends anymore, because the point is together, we are one people on this globe.
Yeah. Making change for the objective of winning something is a rule of business. But I think that an even bigger role for designers is to make change for the betterment of something, an outcome instead of an income. And speaking of this, I think every design consultancy owes you a debt of gratitude for bringing design to the fore, bringing it forward and convincing CEOs in the C-suite and many of these companies to listen to designers, to give them a chance, to give them a voice, to show change. And that is, how did you, I know that must have been hard in the first days that you were trying to do that, because nobody was listening to the artists or the designers.
Yeah, okay, thanks for it's a bit, your question is good because it assumes that we have to be listened to. I think we must scream so we are heard.
I find that in my career, I have also had to not literally scream, but be very forceful about certain things in order to create something positive.
Sorry for interrupting. I think a true designer, you also one of them, you always come up with something else. Why is this glass like this, Industrial produced, too heavy. Okay, it keeps water. The problem of a glass of water is thirst. So how can you make thirst pleasant? Not by touching this senseless, primitive thing. This handle is wrong. It's a teacup, is it a coffee cup? So there are so many things wrong. I sometimes can go crazy, and I am, yeah. Wherever I look, there's shit.
I know.
Really. So to give an idea about what designers should do, it's my advice. And you also followed it. First of all, researching. And actually what we did in Frog was always looking at people. That's what Patricia does with Whitlet. And I'm learning still a lot of that. If you ask people what they want, they do not know what they want. No. But if you observe them, let's say, for example, medical devices are horrible because people never look at the patient or the technology. There was a computer company she did research for, all the videos came, people say it's all wonderful, and there's still this cable on the table, and dongles and stuff. Why is that? Okay, Apple makes clean computers, but the dongles around? Sorry, not good. And so wherever I look, there's something wrong. And I think that is the precondition of being a designer. You must see all the shit and want to fix it.
I am one that has serious OCD, but it's obsessive compulsive designer, not disorder.
Back to the core, and one thing about the past is, I also was desperate personally to get things done. So I called the Vega company and said, I want to be your chief designer. Interview, was still a student, got there, and also later won this award, and he offered it. Anyway, so I got his attention. But he didn't see me before that He also refused a while to see and hear me, but finally he realized I was unavoidable for him, but I also told him that his design stuff looks like a brothel.
Like a brothel?
And I had seen brothels as an officer getting our soldiers out for not paying, you know. You know, in the army over the weekend, the young officers have to be officers of the city. You get a call.
I can't wait to see where this is going.
You get a military police, and then you go to the brothels and get the guys out, have to pay. And, yeah, so I know how it looks.
I didn't quite get that chain, but we're good.
Yeah. It's here, it's too Puritan. It's kind of hidden. Nevada has it, I guess. But the point is, it was not adequate to present something like that in the terms of consumer electronics, looking like something not really ethical. It was appealing to the wrong instincts, because that's also cheap. It's not love, it's sex. And so that was a bit provocative for him, but he understood.
Okay, yeah, I see.
And then came the next thing, that you have to deliver. You know, getting attention is one thing, but a lot of kids today think it's now done. And why is this customer so stupid not to understand me, how great I am? A rejection is a good input because you get better.
Yeah.
It's also harmonizing. And all these things, you know, so back to the research Patricia does, when you observe people, they don't know what they want, but you see in acting that what they should have. Okay, if this would be different, it would be better. So you get inspired, and that's the next trick we have to teach our young designers, to watch, analyze, think, rethink, not design thinking, that's bullshit. Think, create, imagine, and that's the secret of the start. At the same time, you must know the process. I mean, you said, okay, if you know that yourself, you come to a company, there's a CEO or VP marketing, whatever, you must understand that they also must be successful. You cannot just come, if you do this, you feel good, you get a design award. For them, it's nothing. What is their intention? Sometimes, if it's a private company, it's the son of the founder who wants to make his or her own point.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's conviction to a certain value. For example, when we worked with companies in Utah, it was very religious, with the Mormons. You have to respect that. You cannot say, okay, whatever. So I think it's, if you like it and you don't like it, then don't do it. You must be authentic.
This is a really interesting point of how important it is for designers to remove themselves from themselves to see reality for what it is. Like what you were just saying. And a lot of designers may think that, well, I'm just going to make the company successful. Sometimes it's about finding what are these hidden dreams? What does this company really want? Like the founder of the company may have had this objective that's been hidden for a long time, and you need to get that out. That's really, I think, removing from yourself to find your reality, to find a real reality.
Yeah, actually, you know, design is not art. It should never be connected. I mean, art is one element of self-expression. Let's say you have a real screwed up soul, and then you're a good artist. And we know all the good artists have some serious psychological defects.
Yeah.
And that makes them creative. Sorry to say that. I have not met one true good artist who wasn't a little bit
kooky.
Yeah, it's true. So we serve people. We use creative methods to serve people, to create something which helps them for a better life, including the obligation.
Don't you think that art should be in there? I think art is important. I never let that go. Art is in everything that we do, not in the purest sense, but art tugs at emotions in ways that industry doesn't, and materiality and objectivity doesn't. It makes you feel something. Don't you think that's important in design?
Yeah, when I play blues, let's say morning at Bobby Timmons, it's music, but it's not art. to be art, it should be Bobby Timmons himself. You understand? It's a matter of quality. But I don't think when you paint, it's like when I play music. It's more self-entertainment. But otherwise
definitely
your
more-
pictures would go for $1 million, you know?
Yeah. I think there's
Or
more.
I would be paid $1 million to play in Montreux. But I'm not.
Did your music ever inform you as a designer? Did it influence you in a way where you wanted to have maybe more a lyrical approach to a design, or you wanted it to flow more and it felt like music to you?
Put it this way, music was an exit from German life. Age 12, I got a radio, repaired it, got it fixed. Then I got American Forces Network Europe, and there was blues, jazz on Wednesdays. So I was always on it, and I had piano lessons because we are a musical family. And then I could play that, and then I got into it. And then the blues has the magic of African music, 5 tones, Western music, 12 tones. So the combination creates new sound sequences. And that was fascinating. And blues is both melancholic and relieving. And that met my inner state. But I was never good enough. We had a high school band, but I was never good enough to make it a career. And I still like to play.
We're glad you didn't.
But it's more like balance for myself. Yeah. But I would not consider it artistic. Art would be, I did a bit of aquarelles to make some money as a student, engineering student. As a design student, I stopped that. And I got 100 marks for a picture. It was quick done. It didn't give me much, to be honest. It wasn't really good. I think art is really, when you're really an artist, you have no exit. You must be an artist. So because you're a very good designer, you're not an artist. It's your hobby. Okay, a bit provocative. It's a good balance. It's like my music. But it's not, we are not artists. Because when we design, we are designers.
Yeah, I don't separate them that much.
Ah, you do. Look at your results.
Yeah, but still, I bring more of the art into my design than I bring design into my art. When I'm doing pure painting, it is me and the medium, the moment, and my emotions, and that's it. No requirements, no clients, no money, just me and the subject.
Okay. Let's settle in on that. I think one guy who mixed it up was Ettore Sottsass. It was okay with Memphis for a while, but he also produced a lot of crappy shit, which should never have been produced because people went bankrupt by everybody went, it was unsellable because people could not use it. You know, a Memphis watch from Tissot was a dud.
You know, I think he was just having fun and experimenting, and he was having fun by making change.
He was a genius. I think he was between. His tragedy was that he wanted to be both. And you cannot do 2 things well. Impossible. That's my theory. You can only do one thing well, and then be really careful to protect it and value it and cherish it. For example, since I discovered in this one lecture, there is a job, a profession called designer. And these are the results, the iron and the radio and this. I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. That was like a complete switch. And all my other tries suddenly became supporting of that, like learning logistics in the army, like process orientation engineering. Suddenly everything was a match. And second, also the competitive nature of it. As a young kid in Germany, go against the stupid establishment guys, you know? And the industry was, like here at this time, it was not a positive setting. Yeah. Right now, our setting here is really, you have to be incredibly creative, motivated, passionate to change things right now. ecology goes back, social goes back. So what goes forward? I think we still have to connect globally. How can we manage it? So that's our task for the young kids today.
Let's dive into that more.
Yeah. And I think there's huge opportunity right now. I mean, think about it. Starting, okay, you didn't see our garage back then, but we were just one guy, two guys, three guys, four guys. At 8 guys, we did Sony worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did Apple, we duplicated to 16. That was nothing. But the impact was huge because each of us was totally fit to the task.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was, we agreed, we discussed, and now we do it, you know? And when we agreed, some people said, I don't really like it, but then they said, why not? But if you are not in, you have to leave. There's only one thing here. You're 100% in it or you cannot. And in the beginning it was more simple. Like with 100 people, it's impossible.
I know. Well, I saw what happened when we grew Frog to 100 people. We just started to lose it a little bit. And upon starting this company, I was like, the vitality is so important. That makes all the difference. Profit's good, but vitality is more important. Essence, like really to create greatness, you do need to be tight like that, what you were describing, and to be fearless. And yeah, great lessons. But what else what else would you tell? I mean, so I think if for a young person to look out at the world today, it's daunting. Like, how can they possibly look at all the mess that we're in and feel like they can creatively make a contribution? What would you recommend for some young, and they don't have to be designers, but
I think you cannot plan it. Those who have it, have it. David Gilland, the guy who co-invented original AI, not as a language model, but as researching the brain. His talent is scarce. So maybe 1 in 8 or 10 is talented, creative, and the others are not. And the whole illusion that everybody can be creative is a hoax. We can respect creativity, and it is our task to get respected. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. I mean, give you an idea. Skiing. I went to Austria as kids. We went downhill, and from Black Forest we thought we can ski. And then we were going down. A little kid came, maybe 7 years old, next to me. He said, "Hey, like this." And then I actually would have an engine built in, it just disappeared. 7 years, we're a kid. Mm-hmm. So, like Lindsay Vonn, at age, what was she, 7? She already beat the grown-ups, you know?
Right.
It's built in.
It's built in.
It's built in. If you don't have it, you don't have it, and you have to and actually one of the lies we do with the schools also, because they want to get paying students, they pretend we can make you creative. No. Find your calling and then excel on your calling, and it's still
that's
your
good
calling.
Advice right there. Find your calling and excel on your calling. I totally agree.
To your question, when you have it, you have no choice than to do it. Yeah. There's no motivation needed. There's no exit.
Yeah. I remember that moment when I realized that within myself.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a green light into the future, and it was go, just all the way.
And also, back to the frog thing, a lot of people, because we talked about why do people come, also why do people leave, people also grow out of frog. Right. You did your own thing. Eve did your own thing. Andreas did his own thing. It's about 4,000 people coming out of frog. We decided for frog now is 2,700 people worldwide.
It's the best design school ever.
It's collecting. It's kind of a gel point for creative talent, respecting it. So when somebody asks, what does it take for me to be a designer? It's the wrong question. That I want to be a designer, can you help me, is a better question.
Yeah.
But what does it take? Hard to say, impossible. I think we have it, we get born with it, and then we have to justify our talent by hard work. So that's basically dream, do.
And a lot of young creative people get locked in understanding what it takes to actualize on their creativity. So I think by opening doors to those people that have it, like you said, is one of our jobs as design leaders, to actually open a door when you see it. You see somebody that wants to walk through and can walk through.
Okay, we are here on a podcast, but some people who pretend to be creative are not.
And we know that. We all know that.
Yeah, so that's the majority.
Yeah, I know.
And it's the problem, as a lawyer, you can fake a lot. As a designer, you cannot fake anything.
No.
Because you see it.
It's right there.
You see it. It's give an idea about quality. A cousin of mine, she died last year, same age as me, a very good pianist. And she told me once, when Karajan looked for musicians in the Berlin Philharmonics and Vienna Philharmonics, so they went there just to get the feeling. So the orchestra played, and they said, stop, this guy, there's 35 people playing, right? And this guy with the flute, come on, why do you do this? How can you hear between 35 people that the flute is slopping? You understand? This is what talent is. Yeah. And the people playing there are so good. So they have a special airplane with a special padding. To keep the noise, I have earplugs so they don't hear the engine noise because it destroys the ears. They cultivate everything. And then he still heard this one guy was playing too slow. He didn't hit the tone at the right time. And that is the fanatism of absolutely top. Or we had Maurizio Pollini was promoting for Sony. He came to Tokyo with 7 Steinway pianos. And they were all tuned, and then he chose one of them to play on. Because it was matching the hall. Mm-hmm. And there were students coming to fill the auditorium, because auditorium needs people in, as you know. And he was testing which piano he would play. So cool. That's the pinnacle.
Hartmut, when I pinged you last night about some of the things you want to talk about, you responded with, you like this koan. Is there something that you do when you are thinking about solving problems that help lubricate your creativity to move forward in that way?
Yeah, we are Western people, I think the koan you have to see in context of, the Asian societies were not very liberal. And I think part of the meditation is to unsettle your thinking or unsettle you. So like the clap of the hand, okay, what is one hand? Could say it's 50%, whatever, doesn't make sense. So the point of not making sense, I think, is the key. I think it also doesn't make sense, past, present, future, already here and tomorrow. The past already, is that all? Yes. But we normally forget today, so it reminds you to find a little bit more out where you are. This morning I was in traffic jam, an accident. And then I thought, okay, I'm here. I just enjoy the moment. Okay, what can I change? You cannot change anything. And then you start to think positive. You could get angry. Some people got next door. Oh, doesn't help you because you're powerless. And I think it is to unsettle you, to get you off base and be able to look at other things. For example, one example which really shocked me, some people have artificial exits for their a colon, which is pretty tough after cancer. So there are devices, and the company did research with Patricia's company, and the engineers who developed those never had talked to patients because patients didn't want to let them watch. So the doctors, nurses told them what not and whatever, indirect. So with the videos, anonymous, people they showed how it works and how it doesn't work, which helped them to improve the device dramatically. So that's kind of unsettling, the typical, we push this away. I think when you say, okay, losing yourself is, we are sometimes too egotistical, but sometimes we also don't think about ourselves. So I think it's always a little bit, finding, instead of losing yourself, you also find yourself. It's like search and you will find, or are you just lucky and find? It's just the two things. If you look too hard to find, you find not the right thing.
Yeah, very true. Also, I think for designers, it's important to recognize, to put yourself in a state of knowing nothing, which sometimes is the dawn of awakening. That's when you can finally see something for what it is, like you were saying about the patients, they're dealing with this problem. I think that's so important as designer. Let me hit you with another one here.
Yeah, but sorry for interrupting. I think there's also a chord in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus said, "Blessed are those of pure heart." So are you blessed when you're pure of heart? For yourself, yes, but you can be a pain for others. Because are you? Like the emperor without clothes, as have a lot of effects right now. How do you judge in a situation which is influential on your life? You'd keep your pure heart? Or are you modifying it with a white lie? It's okay to be a little bit of a crook. And I think it's also a guiding principle, Those who don't lead, because they create leaders. It's always illogical, logical. And that is what in general, I really like about these things. But it's also interesting, sometimes it's also manipulated. For example, with my Chinese students, for example, to give them loose, they had to read the Tao Te Ching, which in Chinese is much more complicated than the Western translations. And that got interesting enough, say, okay, those who lead, or those who don't lead. In Chinese, it's a discussion, because it goes, The point is interaction. Start to think, start to feel for others.
I think there's too much emphasis in the Western world about getting to the answer like right now and making a judgment and seeing things very binary. Whereas in the Asian culture, like what you're talking about, to embrace, to observe, to feel love.
Mm-hmm. One is ethics. To give an idea, actually, the Christian message normally, the Jesus message normally is very philosophical and a good guidance to be an ethical person. The problem starts when people abuse it to justifying their unethical behavior with Christianity. And actually, it's also interesting about the Bible. Okay, we had to read it as kids. Some stuff were removed because they were probably too sexual, whatever, funny enough. But it's always something really ethical, philosophical, and suddenly comes those stupid rules about food and whatever, which had to do with health, physical health, not mental health. And so the abuse of religion is kind of shocking when you really think about it. It's all the religions all together caused the greatest mass murders, except for the Nazis and Stalin, in history. So I think we have an ethical compass built in. which is given us by whatever you call it. I think we have more, something got more within us than have this authority doing all these things. And I think when you do that, you normally think, yeah, I shouldn't do that, or have to do it. Let's say, would you save a person from fire?
Of course.
It doesn't make sense for yourself, but you do it. And that is a deeper ethical, call it, feeling. Same thing, design is good enough, has some problems, it will fall apart, people will cut themselves, or am I taking the effort, extra effort to fix it? Or the client likes it, I don't like it, happened often to me. No, I go back and said, it's not good enough yet. Can we give it another round? It's this extra...
Yeah, I do this all the time.
You know, it's this extra commitment that it's like I said on the half mile, the last 50 meters. Are you to the point where you just don't think anymore, just feel? That is good. If you don't, if you still think to the end, I got the money, the budget, all is fine, not good. And actually, I'm not a saint. Nobody is. But we should try at least to be saints.
One thing about the design process that I always revere and I try not to control is the moment when you have a realization and everyone starts to laugh. I laugh internally. And I read this koan, the sound of laughter indicates the truth is near. Does that promise of creativity still turn you on after being a designer and design leader for so long?
I don't like that one, to be honest. I mean, laughter can be also the laugh about you, which is very negative. I think it's more, I think it's more to have a dream. In general, we always have a dream to achieve something beyond what we think is possible, something really, really incredible. And then we try to move to it. I mean, like Steve said, being insanely great is naturally insane and great. That was him. But the point really was, it's beyond what you normally would expect. And I think at that moment you also should feel, okay, I cannot give much more. For me, it's more a relief when I reach that point. Not always, but it's more the relief. Okay, that could be it. And then, okay, next morning, could it still be? No, I try once more. So push it to the edge. I think that's more for me the fulfillment of a creative process.
The act of pushing it to the edge.
Yeah, that is, you get to the judgment of the people because they will decide, are they happy with it or not? Yeah, for example, once I was in a flight, the guy next to me used a Walkman, economy, to Hawaii. And then he said, yeah, look at that, it's cool. I didn't tell him that I was involved. It would have been totally shit. But the fact that he loved it so much, that was a reward.
Yeah.
Despite all the compromises we had on that project, or the same thing, I flew once from Boston to Brussels. Guy was in a Disney cruise line, which just had launched the first two ships, the Wonder and the Magic, and then he said, oh, we are the family, kids, Disney cruise lines. And then he listed all the features we had worked up. I didn't tell him, you cannot, because then you just, oh, what a jerk, you know?
Yeah, right.
And that's actually the magical moment of...
Yeah. That is one of the biggest gifts for an industrial designer, to see the values that you were so personally inspired by, that you created something looking into the future of some form of consumption, a consumer using your thing. You have to be a fortune teller to design something that in the future somebody is going to like. then the ultimate reward is when you do see someone using this device that you
actually,
were hoping that was going to work, actually does, that's a kick.
I mean, there are some funny magical moments. For example, way back there was a German trade group did a competition, which is the nicest TV, and there were all those wooden monsters, and one of them was a white Vega thing, and people could actually vote. And then there was a lottery at the end, which was the nicest, and of the ones who voted for the nicest, they took one winner who would get it. So a 12-year-old boy from an orphanage won the TV. And then we went to the orphanage, and Dieter Motte always got more TVs to them. They also had free orphanages. And then that your TV ends up in an orphanage with all those kids looking for love and everything, and then having a presentation and telling them, and the lights go up. That was one of the moments where they get rewarded.
Very cool.
Then
Very
all the
cool.
hours are forgotten. I mean, most of the time in the end, you just have to work like crazy. There's not much space for philosophy. It's just staying awake and not cutting yourself.
I like this one. Our eyes see things horizontally, but our mind sees things vertically. Just as a little, you don't have to respond to that. Just I find that very.
It's a bit it's a bit overused, and it's a bit. I mean, you see a cheater when you see him, and I see a lot.
This is, I think, a big problem in our. This is actually not a koan, but it's a George Bernard Shaw quote, where he said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." I see this so often in a design process where designers are trying to convince a client to do something, and they're just not seeing it from the same point of view.
Good point. Why don't they see it?
One is, I think the vernacular is different. The narrative is different. Designers often coming from this right-brained, non-linear, abstract place where they don't have maybe the proper voice to communicate. That's part of a design meets business problem. And business folks often are not thinking
I think
openly.
I think it's a designer's fault.
How so?
Okay. Very early on, I was, as an engineering student, intern at Bosch. And then they abused us for low payment to create really valuable stuff. But the response I got, they didn't want what we did. So I knew I will never in my life work for Bosch, because they are not the wavelength. It was my fault to assume, okay, we were naturally happy to get some paid thing. I think we designers also must be willing to adopt the client as an equal partner in terms of whatever it takes, ethics, attention, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. For example, in Sony, that was very foreign back then. They told me first to wait a year to learn how it goes, because first of all, they don't want to lose face. To learn the system, how they work, was very different from Germany. For example, the factories were very powerful, the designers were slaves, stuff like that, engineers were dictators, and so on and so on. And then we also had to inject it from the top, and then convince them by success. And how does and in Japan, that's different. It's like dating somebody, they don't want you. You can try whatever you want. It will never work. There must be resonance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a part of a designer. We must learn to feel the resonance that the other side also likes what we can bring in. It's a bit like with Steve. The point was not, okay, at the beginning he said, what can you do for us? Sony is cool. Can you do Sony for me? I said, I should not do Sony for you because it's done. It also would be unethical and would not be adequate for what you want. Yeah. You are young, Sony is older. Yeah. your California, Sony is, and so on. And then we slowly came to the point that he wanted 1 million Macintoshes in the market. And then I said, the market is too small you look for, because it's only education and business. IBM dominates it for you. For Apple is only 100,000 left. How can you sell 1 million? You must be consumer. Then when Steve came back, same thing we discussed. What can Apple do in the future? It must be a digital consumer electronics company, not a computer company anymore. So change the paradigm and agree upon, then it will work. But if you try to push my idea, onto something, at Motorola, we got well paid. It helped us a lot, just to be honest. We did very good work, but it didn't resonate. Not for them and not for us. It was like this, arranged marriage thing, you know. It could work, but normally it's not a marriage, it's arranged. So I think the designers have the task to find the company is there, we are not. So it's our job. It's really, for example, okay, I do my own company on Esslinger, the audio system. You have to, in that case, I'm both the designer and the entrepreneur. And I listen to myself. I have to listen to my partner because I'm kind of party. And the point is really, what do I like and what would I like if I would be the entrepreneur? I have to look for the numbers and stuff like that, logistics. The interesting thing is Patricia has a client with Whitlet, and they want the impossible. They want a solution, but they are not willing to accept the solution, which is number one. So slowly, I think she can move them to the point where they can look for a solution instead of getting an explanation why the current solution doesn't work. In this twist, I'm pro-client in that case because I think it's our job.
That's interesting. I think it's...
And also your success, when you have a successful thing, you meet the resonance with the client. You cannot say they're stupid, they don't get it.
No, you don't get anywhere that way.
Yeah,
I think one of the keys is, well, one, you need mutual respect. And you both need to find one another's frequency and connect with one another and really keep an open mind.
Yep.
And as designers, sometimes you have to just listen, just sit back and listen and watch. And if you do draw upon your artistic self, that is one of the best value sets that you already were born with.
Yeah.
And I think some designers think, well, I've been taught methods, research methods, problem-solving methods where you can force a certain situation, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes it's also trial and error to get that client to snap to your frequency or vice versa, you snapping to theirs.
I mean, there was an interesting article by Robert Fabricant, also ex-Frog, in Fast Company, that all those creative design officers, chief design officers, get laid off. And I think it was a bit of a fashionable thing to have a chief design officer, like a trophy.
Right.
And then it was not their fault that it didn't work. It was, sometimes it's not a match. You know, that's the point. You meet somebody, and you find out over time it sounds attractive. Now, Alberto Alessi, a really nice guy. Then he asked me, Hartmut, what is the future of this? Future? And then we talked about politics. I said politics. No. The future of design. I said, Alberto, I don't care. It's a bigger picture. And at that moment, Alessi was a smaller company than Frog. So wow. Sure, they're 100 million. It's not that much in terms of for the image a company has. And then he just wanted my name. I said, that's fine, and then please do this. But then I don't drink alcohol, so he wanted a German beer tablet tray. And I said, this is wrong. I'm not a beer drinker.
Yeah.
But then you realize it's better to stay friendly. And next time I said no. And he realized it's not a match. And it also was not a success compared to other people he worked with, like Ross Lovegrove. It was a success. So you must resonate on that level. Mm-hmm. But actually a question the other way around. Okay, we are different, which is good. By Chinese, give an idea. The reason why I think our marriage, at least by my definition, works well is in Chinese thing, Patricia is a tiger, I'm a monkey, which is an impossible combination. So my Chinese friends said they never heard of anybody being married under these signs anyway. So what is your driver? Okay, you said you like the feeling. I think you're a bit more romantic than me.
I mean, I love the act of design. I like working with people. Yeah. I like digging. I'm kind of like an archaeologist. I like to discover things. I'm very curious. I do have a romantic view of what design is.
You're very romantic. Yeah,
yeah, I am. And, I kind of feel like it's a gem to me. I find it very special and it's very pure. And I try to keep it pure. I really, I respect the unknown, and I like to tap into it. I feel like creativity is rarely deeply understood by people. I give it great reverence, and I place it in a position where me, my team, and all of the clients we work with get a taste of it.
So what is one word, when you say what is driving you, you do what you do, what is the main driver? One word.
One word?
I give you mine then.
Oh my God, to bring this down to one word? It's probably love. That's really romantic, but you know what? Love of working with people, love of design, love of simple things like beauty.
Yeah.
Love
is one word, is good. Mine, funny enough, is duty.
Duty? Really? Why?
Yeah, I had a pretty dire upbringing, and this, for me, was to fulfill my duty. Because I just felt privileged by talent, whatever, or luck I had, that I can do this. I had incredible luck. And then I just want to justify it by doing my duty.
Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that with you, because you seem very kind of, you seem like you have a lot of internal drivers, versus duty I think more of as an external driver.
No, it's just the inner thing, to feel obliged to justify what you got, to give it back, to make it. Mm-hmm. And you must understand, had a little bit to do with my grandpa. After the war, growing up in a village where everything was very simple, and then learning about German history, which was not very enjoyable, to be polite. And then the recap back to the great thinkers like Heine and Goethe and so on. It's duty. It's duty.
Fascinating.
I mean, there was no reason to build a company with a couple hundred people, you know. It was not ego. It was, at the beginning of Frog, the point really also was to provide a good job, well paid, for people who normally don't get paid at all, if and get abused by the system, and make us ourselves fit enough to succeed in that environment, which I think is a duty we got. I also was an officer in the army, which is a similar setting.
Right. You know, it's a testament to your character that you were able to take a driver.
Maybe the fun is a bit of a lie, I agree.
But my point is, the fact that you had duty as your ambition, the fact that you were able to go so far beyond that and create wonderful experiences for people. You have not only just designed, your company has designed beautiful objects, successful objects, moved businesses, changed careers, built careers.
Yeah.
To think that the source of that, the internal source, is duty, that's amazing.
In the beginning, it certainly was, because the situation, it's kind of interesting today. People think, okay, why is design not respected? It was always like it. The creative people, the point is, when there's been this test in Austria, we did about brain research. So they checked out, you get an object like table tennis balls. So what can you do with it? You can make a thing. And creative people, within half an hour, have about 10 ideas. And non-creative people have no idea. And measuring it, the non-creative people are very active on the logical left side, and the creative people are active both on the logical side, but also in the rear. And a lot of dopamine is measured in the blood. So they always took blood samples every minute. And then the point is, we creative people achieve happiness by doing what we do, whether else the non-creative people, logical people, realize we will be happy already, we don't have to get paid. Like Peter Thiel in his book wrote, you don't pay designers, they're stupid enough. Take students, work for free. The whole design profession is a hoax. So billionaire naturally makes sense. So the point...
Well, we're going to have to unpack that.
No, the point really is, and that was my feeling, because good thing was, as an engineering student, I made more than double the money than the chief designer from Bosch. He was 50 years old back then, Mr. Wally. So I thought, and then also when you work in Italy, you have to pay $2,000 a month to them, Bellini and so on. So I thought, that is not just. So mostly people from Japan were back then working there. So I thought there must be a just system. And we were the first ones in Germany and Europe who paid young designers well. Think about it. We had people asking for jobs like crazy. It was beginning kind of emotional challenge. Mm-hmm. So that was part of the duty, yeah? Make this respectable, because it's important. And also we have no choice to do something else. And we create value. So it's a bit more complicated. But the good thing is, for me, duty, so I'm really happy that Frog still exists. We've got a good home. We have good talks. They do something else that I would do sometimes. It's also okay. But it's still a home for creative people worldwide. Biggest growth in India, by the way. They come and say, we want to be that. And I think that's one achievement I'm sometimes more proud. If I feel proud is not whatever, then the results disappear. But the people stay.
Yeah. It's a community that you built.
Yeah. So it's duty, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it feels good, because when you do that, there's true happiness. It's guilt-free happiness.
Yes, I totally agree. Hartmut, this is just, we could talk all day. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
And I think it's my duty to close this podcast right now, because...
No, it's actually, we are in a mission, and we cannot give up. That's the big point.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We are the side of
that,
back to art. We are not art, but we are culture. We are building a culture, a human culture, and also more and more sustainable in connection with nature. Yeah.
Yes.
We have to change. Yeah. It's not fun. It's duty.
That is duty. When it comes to improving the world, bringing nature into what we do, that's duty.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.